Hello and welcome to lecture 5 of the lecture series, Psychology of Well-Being. And the title of this lecture is Social Constructionist Approach to Well-Being, Centering Personal Experience Within Sociocultural Context. Well, what are the important takeaways of this particular lecture? Before I begin the lecture, let me summarize those potential takeaways in the form of the outline of the presentation. Well, it will begin with recapitulating contributions and limitations of positivist paradigm that we saw in lecture number 4. Then we'll be understanding social constructionism or social constructionist paradigm in terms of its basic assumptions. That talks about recentering voice or subjective experiences or identities of the person. And what is the importance of context in that kind of process? Well, it also takes us towards an indigenous approach or the cultural approach towards understanding the shared meanings of well-being. Well, the lecture will end with some examples of indigenous approach to well-being with the help of an ethnographic study conducted by me on the survivors of Kutch earthquake that hit the western part of India in 2001. Well, so let's see what all contributions and limitations that we could understand in the theories pertaining to the positivist paradigm that we saw in lecture number 4. Well, the lecture 4 took us towards various theories of well-being with the positivist assumptions, and these theories were focused on either happiness or satisfaction in life that we saw in subjective well-being, optimum psychological functioning that we saw in psychological well-being, individual society relationship in shaping well-being that we saw in social well-being theory, then motivational determinants of well-being that we saw in self-determination theory, and then we also saw the PERMA or the PERMA model and the objective conditions of well-being in objective well-being theory. Well, all these theories contribute to our understanding of well-being as an intrapsychic phenomenon, as an experience or as shaped by the perception of self in society. However, these largely ignore the ways in which social or structural realities, for example, economic or socio-political conditions, shape their experience of or struggles for well-being. So this limitation or this particular element of human life, which is the way social or structural realities shape our lives, shape our experience or struggles for well-being, that is something which has not been taken care of in great detail, in sufficient detail by these positivist paradigm theories that we saw in lecture number 4. Well, the new paradigms of the study of well-being, if we recall previous lectures, particularly lecture number 3, well, these new paradigms, which are social constructionist and critical theory paradigm, these tend to bridge the limitation that we just noticed in the previous slide in two important ways. Well, social constructionism enables listening to the experiences of or struggles for well-being and how it may be shaped by sociocultural or historical context from the person's point of view, from the people's point of view, rather than through pre-existing academic theories alone. Well, we can recall from lecture number 3 that we had seen that how, with the help of people's own point of view, the people who were a part of a particular um, village in India, where we could notice that the state government was trying to create special economic zones, much to the surprise and unwillingness of the people themselves. So we saw that how their struggles for well-being was shaped by the existing sociocultural or historical context. So rather than, again, I would emphasize, rather than moving towards or taking help of pre-existing academic theories alone, these academic theories may remain as a kind of reminder, may remain as a kind of, um, let us say, certain concepts or certain assumptions that may help us compare what people are going through. But these concepts or academic theories do not simply become the checklist to help us understand what is happening in the life of people. So that's where social constructionist ideas about well being come to the fore. Well, then, we also saw as the new paradigm, critical theory paradigm, situates the experiences or struggles for well being within the prevailing hierarchies, such as race, gender, religion, ethnicity, or class. We also saw the example of how low income countries, low income communities in South African cities, how mothers have to face the brunt of gender norms as well as neoliberal discourses, which tends to commodify or individualize the responsibility of care just on the mother rather than other family members or the father. So let us see in this particular lecture, we'll pick up one of these new paradigms called the social constructionist paradigm, and we'll try to understand that how it helps us understand from people's point of view rather than from academic theories alone the experiences or the struggles for well-being amongst the people as shaped by the prevailing context, cultural or socio-historical. Well, before we go into further details, let's look at the basic assumptions of this particular paradigm. Well, the question of the nature of reality is addressed like this, that the reality is taken to be socially constructed. What does it mean? Multiple facets of the phenomena are comprehended using multiple sets of data as well as interpretations. Well, the relationship between researcher and the participant is that of empathic relationship, empathy and compassion. And then methodology tells us about the joint construction or creation of meanings between researcher and the research participant or researched by creating space for the participant to voice their concerns and lived experiences and share their lived experiences. Well, axiology, which is the purpose that the study or the understanding about people serves to the people themselves, it tells us that usually such a purpose is decided in collaboration with the participant, aiming at empowerment or emancipation from forces that are popular or academic cultural discourses that deny participants their voice. Well, let's look at one of the important features then of the social constructionist paradigm or perspective that would help us understand well-being from the point of view of people. What does it say? It talks about, as mentioned earlier, recentering voice of the person rather than the exclusive focus on existing concepts. It provides adequate, it provides meaningful, emphasis on the context, sociocultural or historical. Well, we'll take the example of, as I mentioned in the beginning of the lecture, resurrecting or recreating or having um, certain ways in one's life to recreate a sense of well being. For example, after a particular difficult situation has arrived, like the catastrophic earthquake that happened in Kutch in 2001, and let us see that how the understanding of well-being could be shaped with the help of the cultural meanings or historically given meanings amongst the people. Well, this earthquake of magnitude 6.9 on the Richter scale hit Kutch, a district in Gujarat state, on 26 January 2001 at 8 a.m. or early morning. Well, according to the data provided by the state agencies, around 12,000 or more than 12,000 deaths took place and several thousands were injured, some of them injured for life, like paraplegics or quadriplegics. Some salient psychological, ecological, and social conditions that potentially threatened the well-being of survivors of this massive earthquake included losing those near and dear ones to them that some of them lost in the earthquake, fear of aftershocks, an absence of basic necessities of life like food, shelter, and clothes, fear of epidemics because of the deaths and the infection that could be that could spread due to the dead bodies that might not be fully taken care of, and the absence of means of livelihood, besides community divide due to compensation money. Now, these were some of the threats to the well-being of survivors. Let's see how the survivors tried to take care of their well-being with the help of resources, some of which, to my surprise, in this particular ethnographic study that I conducted, was available in the cultural narratives or the cultural beliefs itself. Well, their well-being was defined in terms of karma. Well, let's get into the details of some of these aspects of karma with the help of the ethnographic study that I conducted to explore the earthquake survivors, how they were, who were living in the Selari village of Rapar block in Kutch district. They had been gradually resurrecting a sense of well-being after the disaster. Well, I also noted that their belief in karma, and karma actually meant internalized duty towards family, community, and nature, not just oneself, family, community, but also nature. So that sort of a belief that I have my duty towards not only myself, but also family and community, as well as nature or other forms of existence like animals, plants, or other parts of human and other other forms of existence, that facilitated a sense of well-being amongst the villagers, the rural community in India. Well, how karma, this belief in karma as a culturally shared belief, facilitated a sense of well-being? Well, it happened with the help of a variety of facets of karma that people could remind themselves of. So the first one was to exercise one's potentialities to the fullest. The second one, diffusion of boundaries between self and other beings. We'll take the examples very soon. Possessing just enough for a healthy and non-luxurious living. And then finally, living in harmony with the forces of nature that could cause happiness as well as sorrow, and that are also beyond human control. So living in harmony with the forces of nature. Let's see in some details how these facets of their belief could facilitate their sense of well-being. Well, we take up the first one, exercising one's potentialities to the fullest, and it tells us, with the help of some examples, that one of the survivors, Ambabhai, while sharing his construction of health or happiness, that is sukh, and dukh, which is illness or sorrow, he mentioned that Manav Dharma says, or human religion says, that we must do our karma by doing utmost labor we can to earn our livelihood, to take care of our family, and serve the society. Well, I could also observe that all the men in the families where one or more deaths had occurred were back to the work after a month or two. Among them were Naresh Bhai, Amba Bhai, Kailash Bhai, and Praveen Bhai, whose families had lost two or three of their members. Well, that's something about exercising one's potentialities even at the time of crisis or catastrophe. The second facet, or the second aspect of karma, diffusion of boundaries between self and other beings of nature, other beings of existence. Well, in our interaction about how he constructed sukh or dukh, which is happiness and sorrow, Jaindra Bhai said that our karma should be directed not only towards the welfare of our family and the poor, but also towards birds and animals which are a part of our living. I regularly give millet to the birds. Well, is that all? No. In this connection, it would be pertinent to take note of the common practice in the village of feeding birds, cows, and other animals apart from helping fellow human beings. So, that is something we can understand from this aspect of karma that would facilitate a sense of well being by not only taking care of oneself but also other forms of existence. And that could be possible because of the diffusion of boundaries between I or self and other beings of nature. Well, this is not merely a ritual like feeding the birds. It's not only a ritual to be completed because several survivors, for example, Jayendra Bhai, Maya Ben, Nirmala Ben, and Veera Bhai, expressed their serious concern with keeping animals fed. They said that such a practice gave them satisfaction and peace of mind. So that's where the rural belief of karma tells us about a sense of well being derived through a diffusion of boundaries between self and other beings of nature. So, how we take care of other beings of nature also. Well, then we move on to the third aspect that came out in that ethnographic study, which is possessing just enough for a healthy, non luxurious living. Well, what does it say? Let's take some example. During the days of scarcity, 2 or 3 days after the earthquake, despite being poor and suffering a death in the family, Veerabhai distributed all his stored millet or bajra to the homeless people in that village. Well, that's possessing just enough for a healthy and non-luxurious living. Then Parasbhai, a farmer who lost his 13-year-old daughter, built a bus stop in the village with the money he had received as compensation for her death. So that's another example of possessing just enough and having a sense of well being through that, having a sense of satisfaction, having a sense of meaning in life through that non luxurious living. Well, the final one is living in harmony with the forces of nature. And what does it tell us? Well, living in harmony with the forces of nature, one can rise above these forces and merge with the Almighty, that is perhaps pure consciousness, to end the cycle of life and death. So that's another belief in the village as a part of the belief in karma and how that facilitates a sense of well being. So the survivors had a firm belief that carrying out one's karma, which intricately relates one to family, society, and nature through one's duties towards them, is the necessary condition for the attainment of peace of mind, despite one's experiencing agony, pain, or illness. So, for many of the researchers or students of well being, it could be very surprising if one is only familiar with the predominant theories that we understood in the previous lecture, which are primarily pertaining to the positivist paradigm. But here we see that how, if we move ahead from the academic, purely academic understanding, or the conceptual based understanding only. If we are able to transcend that kind of methodology, we are able to move on to the cultural understanding of well being. And that can lead us towards a variety of new ways to understand well being that could be highly fulfilling for people. Well, karma was taken as the key means of maintaining peace of mind or shanti. For example, a farmer who was prevented from farming due to severe asthma expressed his peace of mind or shanti as he was able to perform his duty of guarding the house. So that is something which is a way for them to relate to their cultural beliefs and having a sense of well being through peace of mind by following their karma, because that connects them back with other forms of existence by taking care of family, society, as well as nature through their duties towards them. Well, that karma or pravritti, they also call that pravritti, is the only medium for peace of mind or shanti in their lives, is captured well by the following saying popular in the culture of Kutch. It says, "Bhutkal no bhuli jao, bhavishya ni chinta nahi karo, vartaman ma pravritti karo," which means forget the past, do not worry about the future, and perform your duties in the present time. Well, the social constructionist paradigm to understand earthquake survivors' well being, what contributions it has made that has helped us build upon the positivist understanding of well being. Well, we could see that in this belief in karma that could facilitate earthquake survivors' sense of well being, the example of eudaimonic well being as seen in one of the aspects of karma, the belief in karma that was exercising one's potential to the fullest. But at the same time, we could also see examples of culturally shared spiritual or transcendental experience of well being, because it also took us towards their meaning of, or the various aspects of their belief in karma, also told us about this spiritual sense of well being, which was diffusion of boundaries between self and other beings of nature, possessing just enough for a healthy and non luxurious living, and living in harmony with forces of nature that could cause, that usually cause, I beg your pardon, happiness and sorrow, and which are also beyond human control. So living in harmony with the forces of nature. That all these three aspects tell us about how their belief in karma, which are primarily spiritual and transcendental belief, could lead them towards peace of mind or fulfillment in their own lives. Well, in some subsequent lectures, we will also learn about the cultural meanings of well being available in the ancient Indian texts that, as observed above, appear relevant for human life even today. Thank you very much.